Weed control is a topic that doesn't get enough attention because it's one of those things that when the weeds get out of control can be super demoralizing for home gardeners. We have our summer garden still going and we're moving into our fall garden. We have really no grasses and weeds in this space, and I feel really great about this transition into the fall garden. I want to help you be able to get the techniques that organic farmers use, utilize them in the home garden so that the transition from summer to fall is a super easy one. There's a few strategies you can implement when doing organic weed control. We can't use Roundup. We don't want to use Roundup in our home garden. We don't want to use any sort of like harsh chemicals. We want to implement these technologies and these techniques that are going to reduce our weeds over time as well. And we want to work with ecology versus butting up against it. So I put a weed control strategy into 3 steps. And once I get to the end, I kind of just repeat each season. And those are to 1, which is clear. That means starting with a blank slate. 2nd is to cultivate, which means to lightly work the soil and kill those emerging weeds. And then 3 is to cover, which is to use like a mulch or a cover crop and help suppress those weeds for a very long period of time. And then when we get into the next year, we might implement that same strategy again. So the first step is to clear the garden. We want to clear the garden space of all the perennial grasses and weeds, as well as those annual seeds that are in what you call the seed bank, the seeds that are naturally present in the soil that will just keep emerging as they work their way to the top. So we want to start with that blank canvas, and then it becomes that much easier to manage those weeds over time. This garden behind me started off as lawn, right? Just thick perennial grasses. So we use the ducks to control the weeds organically. I use them as kind of like our perimeter defense. They keep the grasses from encroaching from the neighboring yards, and I just move them every few months to different sides of the yard. This area that they're in right now had like 2 feet of weeds. It was very deep, very thick of weeds, and in just a month they've like totally cleared it out. You can do that for your future garden. So if you have animals or have access to animals, goats are great, pigs are great, chickens are great, ducks are great. You can fence them into the area where you plan on putting the garden. And as long as those plants are actively growing, the grasses, they'll have a good impact and start killing the grass and the perennial weeds, work up the soil, get those annual weeds germinating. And then you can take them off, let it rest for just like a month, and then put them back on, and they'll smoke all those weeds. They'll be gone. So that was our strategy for this garden. I had chickens at the time. We fenced it off. We filled it with leaves from around the neighborhood in the fall. And we kept the chickens on there until midsummer so that there's a chance for all those weeds and grasses to emerge, and then the chickens took them out. So that's one strategy for clearing. The other one is to use a silage tarp or a clear tarp. These are 2 different strategies of solarization and occultation. So the black side of the silage tarp is great for blocking out the sun, and it does heat up the space underneath the plastic. The white side, however, will help keep it a little more cool and moist. And so we can, like in the early spring, we could put down the clear plastic, let all those weeds and grasses start becoming active a lot earlier than they normally would. And then we can put the black plastic on top of it to smother them out. It's like a 1-2 punch. In the summertime, the white side is great for carrots and beets. We can have the black plastic or the black side up of the silage tarp. It is eliminating all the weeds. Maybe after like our broccoli and cabbages come out, we got about a month before we plant our fall garden. So we can have that there, pull that off, seed our carrots, put the white side on for about 5 days, and then pull it off, and we get almost 100% germination of our greens and carrots and beets. So those are really great strategies for clearing all the perennial grasses and weeds, and does a double duty of helping you germinate your carrots and stuff. Another strategy is to use something like a mechanical remover of the grass. So you can use like a sod cutter, shovel, you can double dig. You can use a tiller, though I would say for things that like grasses that reproduce through rhizomes and like basically their roots. If you divide those, you basically created 2 plants. If you till them, you've created 100 new plants. Nutsedge also is kind of similar in that regards. Every time you cut it, you're just dividing the plant to more and more. One other strategy we use is to use the torch. So you can actually use like a propane torch to burn off weeds. If you're covering a large area, you could just let the grasses grow, don't water them, and then burn the field in a dry period, or you could roll hay on top of it and then burn it. Obviously, be careful if you're in a drought or an arid region. Use common sense and safety. But this strategy does work well too for clearing weeds, though it may take multiple applications because grasses have already evolved a fire ecology. They're resistant to fire. So it might take, a burn and then wait for them to kind of recover and then another burn. So that's clearing the garden of weeds. Next, we want to cultivate. So cultivation is that disturbing of the soil in the very top, half inch to quarter inch of soil. We're not trying to till, we're just trying to slice through the smallest size of weeds. So whenever seeds emerge, they have these things called cotyledons. It's the first set of leaves that they have. It's their embryonic leaves, and they have energy for them to help get established. When weeds are at that cotyledon stage, or what they also call a thread stage, when the root is just like a single thread coming out the bottom, if you can hit them at that level, they won't get established, and they will really quickly die just with a simple pass of like a hoe or a cultivator. I'm trying to find weeds to demonstrate. That's I guess a good problem to have.
Hey, you're just too good, man.
I don't know about that, but we got the long handle. We also got the short handle. So if you got raised beds, or this one's also good for transplanting, you can be able to open up the soil, transplant, or chop any weeds. So I'm just running that kind of this way, killing any weeds here. And the other cool thing is I can use that little tooth to grab the weeds right there at the root, if I can get it out of my cucumbers. So cultivation is working that soil in a really strategic way to get weeds when they're really small. And so this is our cultivator. This is the Razor. This is the one that I invented and works really well for weeds at all stage. You can pry up small saplings with the teeth. We got the long handle version for really big weeds. I can reach over to another bed and grab weeds. I can use it in a thumbs down manner to cultivate, larger areas and be able to really grab those weeds and grasses. I can use it more of like a hook and get under like larger grasses and lift them up and be able to move them out of the garden. And then in a thumbs up manner, I can use it in kind of a sweeping action and be able to walk down my garden bed and cultivate right between my rows of carrots without hitting any of them. So that's what we're gonna be doing when I cultivate. Is in this bed, I've got some radishes, beets, and carrots that are emerging. And it's a little early to be cultivating, but for the sake of the video, I just wanted to show it. I like to wait until a day after a rain or a day after I run a sprinkler or something, so the soil's a little bit easier to work. But in that thumbs up position, I'm just gonna drag it over the soil right between my rows of carrots, and I'm just disturbing just that top like crust. So I'm not being careful not to hit any of my carrots. I'm going right between the two rows, and then I've eliminated every emerging weed in between them. And the significance of that is that if I do this a couple times, like once a week for a month, then I will essentially have like no more weeds to worry about. And that's the sweet spot right there. So now the only place that these weeds can emerge is kind of in my carrot rows, here, here, and here. And if I'm on top of it for like the first month, eventually my carrots will get ahead of the weeds, and then they'll be able to close in the canopy and smother out any more weeds. And so then I don't have to worry about weeding the whole rest of the season for my carrots. It also helps keep the weeds down for subsequent years. I'm not letting any weed get to full maturity, go to seed and create more weed seed. So this is another good example of the cultivating method that I just showed you. I'm using my razor to hit the weeds when they're really small. This is sweet potatoes and butternut squash. And I cultivated these once a week for the first 3 weeks, and then I let them go. And there's just no emerging weeds. The only competition they have is kind of with each other. They're kind of in a battle right now. Here's a butternut kind of making its way into the sweet potato vines. But that just kind of shows, like, if you're on top of it, and you have a regular program for your cultivation, then it just saves you so much time. So by doing our regular cultivation and having a schedule for it, once a week, every week, until for the first month, we can knock out those weeds long term. They just won't be able to compete, and the canopy will close in and smother out any additional weeds. The same thing's been true over here with our cucumbers and our tomatoes. There's a few weeds that kind of popped up in some gaps, and with my cultivator, I can reach over there and grab them, and then I can feed those weeds over to the ducks, all without moving very far. So that's also been one of the things I wanted to really make a goal for me in my garden, was how do I garden essentially without bending over? I don't want to hand pull any weeds, and that's been achievable. And then I don't want to have to be on my hands and knees and bending over and grabbing at weeds and just fighting grass and all that kind of stuff. So with this tool, I can basically just walk around the whole garden in maybe 5 minutes, just kind of spot treat any weeds that did kind of slip past me. And then I can regularly cultivate when those plants are small and be able to stay on top of it. So thumbs down for more aggressive action when I'm cultivating, like walk paths. And then thumbs up when I'm making more of a sweeping motion. And then another strategy I implement too on the smaller weeds is to kill the weeds that are in between the carrots, like in the row. I can also use my Razor Cultivator to make a furrow down the middle and kind of throw some of that soil up onto the emerging plants. The weeds are too short and they get covered up by the soil, and the taller plants like these radishes can just push on through. So that's also another strategy you could utilize. The final step is to cover the soil. So as part of a regenerative practice in gardening or farming, we always want to make sure that the soil is covered. It acts like a skin that helps protect the soil not only from erosion, but also the microbes that are in the soil, which feed the plants. So there's 3 different things you can do to cover your soil. You can use a mulch, like this is wood chips that I just get from a local tree trimmer. They are free, and I probably get about maybe 1 or 2 loads. Use them in the garden, around the perimeter in the landscaping, and under like a little play area for our kids. And it's free. So one of the things I like to do is I will cover our walkways with the wood chips, like here. And then I'll do that in the summer, and then by the next spring, that's decomposed and I can rake that composting in place basically onto the beds, and then refill the walk paths with more wood chips. If you are gonna cover, even if you're gonna cover a garden area, you can also smother it with like really thick paper or cardboard, and then put the wood chips on top of that. That will really help kill the grass underneath it if it's still alive. 2 other ways that we can cover the soil is we could use a really dense planting. So these sweet potatoes are doing kind of double duty. They're not only growing a crop that we can harvest, but they're growing so densely and out-competing all the other weeds that they're also providing weed control for next season. They've eliminated all the grasses and weeds by out-competing them here. So another way to cover the soil with a plant is a cover crop. So cover crops can do a lot of different things. They can be grown to smother weeds, kind of like what our sweet potatoes are doing. And a great one for that is something like Sudan grass in the summertime, or hairy vetch in the wintertime. Hairy vetch is also a legume which fixes nitrogen, so it actually puts more nitrogen in the soil than what it takes. Also a great use. Clovers are good ones. A few others that I really like, especially when I'm growing winter squash, which I plant around the 4th of July, is I will plant winter rye the fall before. It'll grow all winter. It'll start to flower in the spring, and I'll smash it down, and then into that mulch of basically straw, I can plant our winter squash, and they'll grow, and I don't have to do any weeding at all for a year. So that's another good way to cover the soil strategically to help eliminate weeds. So if you implement these strategies, I really think it's gonna help make the garden a more joyous place. You're not gonna be fighting these weeds. And if you wanna learn about some of the other strategies we use in our home garden to keep our workload in the garden to less than maybe 20 minutes a week and still be able to produce about 2,000 pounds a year, check out our other videos on our YouTube page. You can also follow us on Instagram and lots of info there. Happy gardening, y'all.